Yes, we are live on this Thursday evening from the UK Truth Proof live stream, and welcome everybody into the stream. And it looks like we've got a good few in there, Paul.
It's great, and I think like myself and you, Les, we're looking forward to sharing an hour or two with Ronald Kinsella and what he's got to share with us, because there's nothing surer that it's all positive from Ron and Philip, isn't it? You know, what kind of week you had?
Not too bad. Shooting a lot of B-roll for Wolflands too, which gets me out and about and across the Humber and places like that. So yeah, and this time I did remember to pay the toll fee, Paul, on time.
No worries.
We won't tell anybody about what I'm there.
We won't tell anybody that you forgot to pay toll fee of at Humber Bridge, will you? Or that I got the actual day wrong for where we were supposed to be going. Don't mention it, Les.
Don't even mention that, no.
But
right,
no,
at the top of the show, just before we bring Ronnie on, because it's not fair to bring this up in front when Ronnie comes on, I don't think, is we've got an interesting email, didn't we, from what was it from?
From Don.
From Don.
Don
Lodge. So the Don Lodge, who creates the webpage for Paul. I'll read the email out, and because it will concern people on the stream if they want to get involved. So, hi, Paul. I wonder if you or Les would like to consider putting a word out on your show tonight to get a volunteer or two to help with the website. So there you go. Anybody who's been involved or got knowledge or expertise in that area and willing to help, just get in touch with Paul and he'll pass the message on. Is that right, Paul?
Yeah, I'll forward info to Don, and then if you are interested, you can liaise with Don, because he puts all information on the website. But obviously, Don's got a lot of other things going off in his life as well, and we all have. So
yeah. So I think Don. Yeah, I think Don thinks it needs to have a bit of a revamp, a refresh, and develop it a bit more. So I think that's where you're going there, Paul, with Don.
Definitely, yeah.
All right, without further ado, then.
Hold on, let's just look at, before we get Ronald on, let's just have a look at this chat.
We'll have a look through, see who's in chat tonight.
So we've got Fred Flintstone, Mike the Disabled Welshman, Stargazer, Steph, John Alexander, Jojo, Sober Carper, Karen Bierman. Let's have a look. I don't want to repeat people. Fire Spirit, Adam Sando. I think Linny will be in, and Mrs. Linny. Pete will be watching. Martin Abbas, John Meakin. There's Al Durham. Good to see you, Al. Zeno. There's. I've got to stop. As I'd say every week, but what we got 106 people. I've probably said 26. So Dragonborn. But thanks for support, guys, as always. And Hezo. Yeah, got to stop, Les.
Yeah, and don't forget, we really appreciate all the support that we've been getting on the Truth Proof.
Linny, Galba, go on.
Yeah, on the Truth Proof YouTube channel. That's been fantastic. Then subscriber number is growing. Thanks to you lot, and thanks to the people who've just joined us on the Truth Proof. You've got a vast amount of videos to look through there. I've just got to say now at this point, I was going to say something else, Paul, and it's just gone out of my head. Right, so basically, that's it. If you've got any questions for our guest tonight or Paul, please put them in caps. It's just so that when I go through the chat, I can see them a lot easier than just the normal chatting there. So if you can do that, that'd be great.
Yeah, put them in caps.
Yeah,
you're on your own with this tonight, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm on my own tonight. Yeah. So without further ado, then we'll bring Ronnie on, and I'll disappear and come back when we get some questions through.
Excellent. Thank you, Les.
Okay, we'll see. I'll see you a bit later, you guys.
Okay. Hi, Ronnie. Good to see you.
Hello, Paul, and Les as well. It's great.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, do you know, it's brilliant because whenever there's a conference, whenever there's a gathering of people interested in the subject, myself, Mary, Les, whoever's with us, we always gravitate to Philip and Ron Kinsella, because just great people to be around. So, first of all, writer, researcher, experiencer, who, along with your brother, I don't mind saying it, are probably two of the nicest people within this subject that I've ever met. So it's a pleasure to speak to you tonight, and thank you for giving us your time.
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure as always. And
brilliant.
I'm very, very honoured to come on. Yes, thank you very much for having me.
Well, I know you've been working hard today, so we do appreciate this, because it's an hour or 2 out of your time. But a lot of people know what you're about, know about your work and your books and your latest book, which we did feature before, but we'll do it again because it's a brilliant book.
Thank
and we'll
you.
be talking about some of the things out of that book. But
Yeah.
let's just wind back a little bit before we kind of jump into the stories. How did you become so entrenched, so involved in subject, you and Philip?
Through seeing a number of unusual things, certainly when we were children. You see, the trouble is that when we were born, you had the likes of Doctor Who, science fiction was becoming in vogue, and all that, and this goes against you. Because Doctor Who itself, I love the Daleks. I absolutely love the Daleks. In fact, there's a story behind that because when we were toddlers, our parents took us to the beach and they had a life-size one that actually spoke, and its ears, I think that's what you call them, were flashing. And we'd never seen one of these things before, and we were horrified. Apparently, I shot one way, Philip shot the other, and our mother was furious. They both had to try and get us, because we were horrified by this thing, this alien creature thing. So it was all that goes against you. But we'd seen a number of very strange anomalies. And of course, back then, you never really spoke about it. When it happened, it was wise not to, even as children. It's very bizarre how we are as human beings because our mode of thinking is quite strange because you adopt science fiction, but these things that they're a contrast to it, although it would feel as though they are science fiction, they're not mentioned, and they weren't to be mentioned. So, and then people refer to you as being highly imaginative. I've always heard that you're highly imaginative. He's mistaken. We can forgive him. He's mistaken. He's over imaginative. He imagined it, but I didn't. They were real, and they were like things from Doctor Who. Certainly, the sphere we saw in 1982 with Grandma, and the doctors I had. I won't reiterate.
No, it's fine. How much do you think parents then overlook the things that potentially could happen of a unexplained nature when children are relaying these things and saying they've seen this or seen that, and how much of it do you think is just sort of goes straight over the top of head and it's just like an overactive imagination?
Well, I guess thinking about that, they might to begin with, but if it's persistent, it would raise an eyebrow. But they would still brush it under the rug, until much later on when the child grows up like we did. And it took me many, many years to understand or try and understand what these things were. I mean, I wasn't interested in UFOs or flying saucers when I was younger, or aliens. Certainly in the Doctor Who arena I was, but not this kind of thing.
No.
Well, it was science fiction, but it wasn't. And that's the confusing thing, because the media, you learned, and I'll say this respectfully, they did. They made an absolute clown show out of it. They denied, and denied. And this stems back as far as Roswell from the 1947 ship that crashed. The constant lies and disinformation that came afterwards. And this was the linchpin that began a secretive program, because they could just turn around and say, well, they didn't see that.
Let's jump right back then, because I know you've got an interest in Roswell, and I don't think no matter how many times someone speaks about it, just like Rendlesham, it doesn't stop being interesting because something clearly happened. So, do you want to share a few of your views on Roswell?
Yes, I mean, Rendlesham is not my turf. That is for other people. I mean, well, Philip and I, along with Susan, our very good friend Susan, used to visit there many times, about 25, 30 times at night. Without anyone else there, we used to visit the forest, and we saw some strange things, very strange. I didn't know then about cattle injuries. I'll say that respectfully. I didn't know about really Bigfoot or the werewolves, certainly not. I didn't know about the aliens, the ones that are now in vogue, the Greys. I knew about them. But it stems back to Roswell, talking about this deceit. Now, you will have people, and I do respect their views. We have to respect everyone's opinions here, because there is no proof. We have absolutely nothing. We have theories.
Spot on.
And well, I've seen some books published based on Roswell. The truth, there is no truth to it. It's truth based on their own narratives, but there's no concrete evidence at all of anything. But what is evident to me, most certainly, is that when you research this, you've got highly skilled men. They come across this thing, and they state that they have in possession a flying disc. Now that goes against, later on, when they realized the impact of this, it goes against what they stated then as a weather balloon. If they could determine what a weather balloon was or a flying saucer, then God help us, they were part of the military. You can see there the lie began to form. And of course, they had to be very careful. Now, in some circumstances, I don't blame them, because other countries, this would raise eyebrows with them. And I think, well, why did it crash in the United States? Why didn't it crash in Australia or the UK? Why didn't it crash in India or China? What have they got? And again, paranoia builds up. So in a way, in effect, they had to deny it. And I appreciate that. I do. If I was working for them, I'd do the same thing. Basically, it had no choice. Your commanding officer tell you to keep your mouth shut. You saw nothing. Now you clear it up and get it back to base. But I do believe it was some kind of exotic spacecraft, and I believe there were pilots. I believe perhaps they were killed, or a number of them injured, or certainly one perhaps survived. There's rumor. But, and as we see in today's narrative, things are very swiftly cleaned up and hopefully forgotten from their end. But the Roswell was the inception of this deception, because from that moment on, they realized that they could just use the same narrative. Nothing to see here, move on.
And it worked.
So, yes, but the point is, they stated categorically that they had in possession a flying disc. There is a difference between the downed piece of tin foil that they're smiling at on the camera. You can't blame him. He was told to do it. He was told to do that. Than a machine from another world or dimension, wherever it came from. But I believe it did happen. And we read accounts of other incidents very similar to that. Now, what raised my suspicions of this is that, and I wrote this, I think, in the Digital Demon or Illusions, I can't remember, is the fact that when they were reported, they were always conveniently crashed or smashed down, not in urban regions, but outside. So no one could really see them. Only the military or passers-by, so they could be swiftly collected. They never crashed in the middle of a city or a town. It's always on the outskirts.
Yeah, but do you think then that obviously that's by design on the occupants of these objects, and does that tell us something? Does that tell us that they're not really interested in us anyway? We might be no more interested than a blade of grass. We don't know what they want, do we?
It would seem so, because I wrote in I think it was published 5 years ago now. I think the Digital Demon was published and then released 4 years ago. I think it was where I stated that were these Trojan horses, because I argued that when you look at the different types of spaceships and the crew, the pilots, they all differed. Well, I gathered that, is it just possible? This is only speculation. We've got no proof as well, which it's good to bash things out. Is it possible that this is a deception in itself? Trojan horses, they had to look different, the ships, both them and the pilots, so as not to raise suspicion or eyebrows at the same species as having the same problem.
Yeah.
It makes you think, and if that was the case, what are they delivering? Now, people state that it's quite plausible that they're gaining some kind of technological advantage from these machines. Now, remember that when the Roswell ship crashed in 1947, this was just after the Great Second World War. Why on earth would an alien species, if this is the case, be deploying fragments of technology to a warmongering civilization? And, by God, we've just come out of a huge war. What they're going to do? Try and technologically equip their weapons to maximize defense? And then if that was the case and the others knew, it would be disadvantageous to the United States. So it doesn't make any sense. It goes round and round.
It doesn't. But then let's assume what you're saying is correct. it was something otherworldly that crashed at Roswell. Did it? And then you're saying, would you put out there, why not China? Why not Russia? Why not in United Kingdom? Why America? We did a short about 2 months since called The Theatre of War, which is on YouTube if any people in chat want to have a look at it, because I thought it was quite interesting that throughout time, legions of Roman armies, all sorts of different nations and races had reported during battles seeing what we would now call UFOs. And it were almost as if they decided the outcome of the battle. And great shields came out of the sky and threw down fireballs on the opposing army. So could this, let's just play with that, could this craft, this thing that crashed at Roswell, have crashed there deliberately to seed the Americans with knowledge?
Yes, I mean, we can't discount it, but it just doesn't make any sense. And now, although I said one crashed in the United States, there were other definitely countries that these have landed in. So, you know, and what did make me laugh was that the fact of the matter is that some people state that they are giving us technology, or they've left us pieces of their equipment that are discernible to us. But how on earth could it be? Unless it was a species intent on doing that lowered their technological might to comply with our own science. I don't know, but the point is that it's rather like, to me, when they were saying these things are being reverse engineered, back engineered, it's possible. But I find it very unlikely that the alien ships, if they had them in possession, which I believe they do, along with the dead pilots, they would have them on deep freeze. They would have the Rolls-Royce treatment, albeit they're deceased, but they would be preserved, state of the art. I find it hard to believe that these machines would hold nuclear reactors and equipment that is familiar to us, but which possibly did drive their own machines, their ships. I mean, we go back even further to the 1890s, where we had the exotic airships.
I knew you were going to talk about them. That's interesting. Yeah. Yes.
I mean, one. Although I said spaceships never crash in towns or cities, one did in the 1890s. It was an airship. I think it was over Judge Proctor's land. It was hanging precariously low, and it swiveled about, and it lost altitude and just blew up. And allegedly there was an occupant on there, a pilot that didn't look like us. He was quite different.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because obviously the skeptic, the people, I don't know, the people who've read into this will say, yeah, but that's just about the time we'd started to come up with the concept of airships and developing the airship, and how interesting that people are now claiming that these phantom airships were being seen. But do you know, Ronnie, in the archive at Bridlington in King Street Library, you can go and look at the newspapers there from the late 1800s and early 1900s, and you can find reports of people seeing these things. And what I find fascinating about the report is they've got huge searchlights that are beaming down onto the ground, and then when people come out and look at them, they're just going away, and the searchlight becomes a pinprick. They've gone. What they're doing can't sound like the movements and that an airship would.
Yeah, they're drawing attention. They want attention. You see, we had the airship, something always just beyond what we can create, and then it moves on to the flying saucer. Now, in the 1950s, the flying saucer was very popular, especially in the B movies. And guess what? The abductees, or alleged abductees, saw flying saucers, and they were, interestingly, at that point, and I mentioned this in The Awakening and in The Illusions, silver. Why would they always need to be silver? Surely an advanced alien race would have shields. We see the brilliant Star Trek and all manner of films portraying ships that are not always silver because they're shielded. So it sniffs suspect to me that there's something else at work, and something that is always just pushing their technological might just beyond ours. Now, I stated they mentioned about back engineering this tech. I'll go back on that. Well, I argued that it would be rather like us handing the Victorians one of our modern day cell phones or mobile phones and asking them to replicate it. Now, they would try, but they wouldn't succeed. They just
It's
couldn't.
been made of wood. It's been
The
made of wood and iron.
comparisons are similar. So I'll tell you what happened to me. I had someone on Facebook when I was mentioning about I could be wrong. I'm not going to knock anyone's theories. It's my own opinions about someone stating that they're reverse engineered. And I said, well, why on earth would they be flying these triangular ships? We're talking about the Belgium UFO wave of the
Yeah, yeah.
90s. Why on earth would the military or this aeronautical elite be flying their aircraft over churches, for goodness sake? They wouldn't do it, or flaunting them before people randomly. And then
Yeah.
some state it's just to gain, some kind of outlook. What do they call it? Their behaviours. Rubbish.
Yeah.
Absolute
Yeah.
rubbish. It's nonsense. This is
To
not
see,
us.
to gauge the reaction of
That's it.
the public, kind of thing. Yeah,
My brain, my little grey cells just froze then.
No,
Yeah,
it's
that's right, Paul. And it's nonsense. So there is something else here, and I don't think personally that all are from outer space or all are from other worlds. There's something else at play here, because like I stated about the sources of the 50s, another very interesting thing I made a point of at the awakening, and I think it's in Illusions. I can't remember. There's so much. I can't remember everything. Dates and times I can't remember. But I noted that what's interesting is that a majority of the stories of the abductees, certainly in the 50s and thereafter shortly, when they had contact with these space nauts or aeronauts, or whatever the aliens, whatever they called them, these ships landed traditionally. They came down, the landing gear retracted, the door opened, they were taken in. Now, what's interesting, and I made this observation because I was thinking, Star Trek came to mind. As you can see behind me, I've got the Starship Enterprise. Philip and I've got it. I love it. Love Star Trek. Love Captain Kirk. He was our captain. What's interesting is the fact that thereafter, when Star Trek came about in the mid to late 60s, I think it was somewhere around that mid to late 60s, they transported people up, right, into the Enterprise, which was a brilliant idea. It's rather like The Fly. They've done it before, The Fly, teleportation, but something went wrong with that. A fly got mixed up with the human DNA and created a monstrosity. But the point is, it was being beamed up. Now, after that, I found reports of people now stating they were beamed up to the ships. Now, is this also a psychological element, or is something able to read us? And this something is reading our minds. And this, I mean, I could be wrong. This is only speculation. You understand? I'm not going to tread on anyone's toes. So it could be wrong. But the point is this something that the same thing of the airships, and it would be similar, I would imagine, the silver saucers of the 50s and onwards? I'm not saying all of them, but a good deal of them.
No,
is there something that is connected to us, to our consciousness, that can read us to a degree, and it goes just a little step further each time. Now we're finding with the UFO cases, we had the sources, and mainly more commonly the triangular ships of the 90s, certainly. But then going back to the Foo Fighters, the orbs, the silver spheres are quite common, aren't they? But it's very strange, isn't it? Very peculiar.
It really is. And you actually touched on one of my questions that I'd got down here. Why is there such a variation in the descriptions of the aliens? And I put, well, we're going to say to you, which I'm saying now, are they tricking us? So do you think we're being tricked, basically, or are there many different variations of these beings, these unknown others visiting us?
To a degree, a large degree, I think we're being tricked, and I'll tell you why. There was another little nugget of inspiration I had, a thought, and to do with these greys. Let's take these greys for an example. These grey creatures.
Yeah.
I'm an artist, as you know. I'm an artist, and I've done a number of images of these embryonic-looking creatures. And it's funny, isn't it? I mentioned in Illusions that it's funny how they're allegedly concerned, or they're preoccupied with this notion of hybridization, and yet the very thing they are instigating, or apparently instigating, they look like, because they appear to be embryonic themselves to a degree. Just as the werewolf I mentioned is from the wilderness, and Bigfoot, the trees and forests, they look more primal.
Yeah.
So the greys represent an embryonic nature. And now, what's interesting, I did some pictures of these and I posted them online, and well, many are very kind, but some have attacked me. Some have even accused me of using AI art. That's insulting, because I tell you what, I had an A level in art, and I can draw very well. And this digital art has opened up a can of worms, because people now say, well, hang on a minute, you've used artificial intelligent art to perfect this. I haven't. I wouldn't cheat. I never have cheated. I don't lie or cheat. But I have to explain now to the publishers when I send images that they're my own work. Isn't that sad? Because AI art is fantastic. It is brilliant. I won't knock that. That's brilliant. But I did a number of these greys, and the amount of people said, oh, that looks like the one I saw. Someone else said, that's not how they look. They've got this, that, and the other. And it drove me back. It drove me back to the AI art, because I tried it. And what it cannot do, what AI art cannot do, is reproduce the same picture twice. The characters will vary. It can't do it. This is similar to what we're experiencing. Is it possible that the greys are being copied or re-illustrated? I'm not saying they're not real. They're being revised, but they can't hold the original copy. Like the werewolves. They always differ. Bigfoot differs. They all differ. Is this something that lacks consistency?
I think you're onto something there. Obviously, is it something that you and Philip are working on?
I've published it. I've published it in Illusions.
Yeah, but have you expanded on it? Are you doing more work on it?
I haven't done anything to do with the supernatural all year. I haven't been very well, actually. I've been quite poorly.
Right.
I've had just a few issues, but I've been more working on a science fiction book than I have that. But I will look into this, because it's very interesting when we consider that. And I'm not saying all of them are that, but certainly the cases I've looked into, they do sniff suspect of something very bizarre and peculiar. And thank goodness for AI art, because I realize that it's similar to this. So what is it?
So jumping from that then, where are you now at this point to where you were 20 years ago? What's moved? Has the phenomena changed, or has Ronald Kinsella changed?
That's a good question. You see, what I've reported, what I've seen, would seem quite a lot within the space of 2 hours. But when you spread it over 55 years, it's quite sparse.
Yeah.
So trying to understand it is quite difficult. All I have seen is what I call the doctors, but I don't believe they were real. They were real in that sense, but I wasn't seeing what they wanted me to see, or it wanted me to see. And the ships I seen are just the orbs and some dark thing, and a triangular ship, although it wasn't triangular. I'm referring to the lights, the shape of them. But I did see one black triangular ship. I saw one. It was so damn bizarre. This was 2010 I saw it. This is what pushed me. This was the crux, the linchpin that pushed me into actually coming out when I saw that gigantic black triangular ship. And my God, do you know, I've tried to explain to people, they will not listen. And this one had rounded corners. This is published in Twin Souls. I had a book published by Capel Ban, a publishing company that I've now folded, back in 2012. But it was the triangular ship I saw, I believe it was 2010, that pushed me to start saying, I've had enough. I've got to report this. And also the internet has helped. But how have I changed? Yes. I think I'm a little bit more wiser to it, because I'm beginning to question it. Certainly some of the cracks, not to step on anyone else's toes, you know, I mean, but this is from a personal point of view. certainly from what I've seen, it seems to be ethereal, and it's not. I mean, you have people describing of greys walking through the walls in their bedroom, for goodness sake, through light, rings of light, and
Yeah.
reptilians walking through the walls to a farmer and his wife, an old retired farmer, I believe it was. They came through the wall and just looked at them. And it didn't make any sense. And what this farmer did, I can't remember the case, it was a while ago. What he did was that he wanted some evidence because it was a continual thing. And he realised that when they'd gone, he looked on the shagpole rug, and there was part of a toenail he found.
Toenail.
Like a thorn, a claw, part of one of their claws. Sorry, they're reptilian, aren't they? Not like us. A claw, one of its claws' foot. It's snagged off on the shagpole, and I don't know what happened there. But this phenomena is extremely strange. Now, why on earth would it just walk through walls to look at people? Why would
walk
it
through walls and absolutely become nothing of substance, and then there's enough substance for it to, and it's almost deliberate. If it left evidence behind, it's almost as though it's wanted to leave it behind. It doesn't seem.
Yes, well, like Roswell, isn't it? Like Roswell and all the others, you know. I believe like Roswell happened. Yeah,
it's like what you said earlier, isn't it? You know, everything that you're talking about is theory and speculation. And myself, I don't think I'm any different. And everybody in the chat, I think a lot of it's not theory and speculation that you've had the experiences. So we'll nail that one down straight away, because that's not in doubt, and it's not in doubt for people in chat. But all we can do is theorize and speculate after the event, what it meant, where they were from, because it leaves nothing. It's just absolutely, it doesn't leave a trace, does it?
No, well, if it does, it's covered up, certainly by the military. If they get their hands on it, it's like the big boys club, isn't it? It's like the mafia. We'll have that. Thank you. You move on. You don't question it.
It's the truth that leaves no proof.
Yes, that's right.
That's right. basically right. It. So let's touch on a word that's become in vogue within the subject: non-human. Because it interested me when it was first spoken about and first used. And why do you think they've changed that from extraterrestrial? Have you got any views on that?
Yes. I mean, we're talking about the congressional hearing with the Senate with David Grush. When he mentioned non-human, now that was a very interesting word to use, non-human. That would suggest to me, that they're not off-world.
Yeah.
They're something closer to home, perhaps. Interdimensional, who knows? I mean, but from Antarctica, you know, different from us. I don't know. I mean, you read the cases of what's been seen there, and it's off limits, isn't it? I mean, no one can get there. But the point is that non-human. Now they've changed it. I know they've changed the flying saucer UFO to UAP. You know, which the acronym Unidentified Aerial Phenomena gives it a kind of more, I don't know, scientific feel, like it's there but it's not, whereas UFO was completely flying saucer. But even so, it doesn't help us. It's as if they're trying to tone it down.
We're still dealing with the same thing, though, aren't we? You know?
Yeah, and could it be that the word non-human, they're toning that down from alien? I mean, I might be reading too much into it, but is it possible that they're toning that down as well? But that's a very bizarre word, or number of words to use for something that is represented as being extraterrestrial and not of this world, isn't it?
It really is, yeah.
And they're dragging that out so much that it's ridiculous. It really is, because we're never going to have disclosure. They're never going to tell us. You imagine the powers that be here on this earth, and I have to speak carefully now about it. They're not going to tell you that there's a superior race, because that would mark them above them.
Yeah.
An elite group that is above them, they're not going to like that at all. So they'll keep a lid on it. You know, but it's very frustrating. And the point is, they're dragging out so long all these, you know, these companies that possibly have, or institutions that have the relics of these ships and the dead pilots in their Rolls-Royce chambers. Well, they'll just have enough time to move them. They'll shift the whole lot. By the time they unlock the key, they'll never find them. They'll just deny it. You know, people have died for less, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
Apparently, involving this subject.
So let's assume then that we're being visited. I mean, I've not written night people because I didn't think that something visited me as a child, and I want to include everybody in chat, because I know most of the people in here are in it for right reasons, and they're looking for their own answers. And even if you're not talking what they want to hear, Ronnie, or I'm not, they're still open-minded enough to accept our views. But where could these things be from then, if they're not from outer space? Are they inside the earth, under the oceans, walking among us? What are your views?
I tend to think that, firstly, they're from somewhere quite different from here. Now, if we think about the Earth, let's have a think about this to begin with. And I published this as well in Twin Souls, the first book that was done by Capel Ban. That everything, because we're based on the atom, everything moves, everything is in motion, even we are, right down to the tiniest nucleus of that atom. It's all atomic, and everything's always turning, moving. Where it or they come from, it might be completely different, but to enter our realm, they would have to become atomic. They would have to comply with our, the behavior of our world and of our cells and the atomic structure. So they might solidify into something that would represent them, albeit weak, from where they come from. This is what gave me an idea about the different ships and crew. Is it possible where they're coming from, they can't sustain their original makeup, so they're changed slightly when they enter our own sphere? It's just a hypothesis to ponder over. It's one of the things. But so I don't think they're coming from other worlds. Now, some might. Certainly, a case of Betty and Barney Hill, there was enough evidence there to support the case of the genuine Greys. Then, that they had come from a world, a planet. Do we have something that's simulating them or copying them? We don't know. But that, I do believe, is genuine, absolutely. Betty and Barney, because Marjorie Fish managed to find the constellation Betty had drawn, the star constellation from where these visitors allegedly came from. So that's not in question. What is in question is the fact that where exactly are these Greys coming from, all these things that appear to be invoked? We must remember that in the 70s and before that, even the 80s, the aliens were not set in stone, those reported. They were a mishmash of many different things. You had Vulcans, ones that looked like Vulcans. You had jellymen, for goodness sake, jellymen. All manner of different creatures, humanoid, dwarfs, pixies. And yet, and I'm going to say it wasn't Close Encounters of the Third Kind. This is moving back to this hypothesis I've mentioned, illusions. Well, it wasn't Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Oh, no. It was Whitley Strieber's book, Communion.
Yeah.
The picture of the Grey on that, I think that was a beautiful picture of it, actually. It's a marvellous depiction by the artist. That invoked some kind of sinister feeling in people that they've seen this before somewhere. And that then boomed, exploded. The interest of this particular species just went nuts. It was so popular, and you then had all these UFO magazines publishing nothing but them on covers, within the pages of them, so they became quite in vogue. I'm just wondering, if it was just by fluke. I'm not discrediting Whitley Strieber at all. His encounter is genuine to him, and I believe him.
But
did
the
image
happen?
Spearhead a conscious thing for something else, to jump on board and think, well, this is good. You have to think about it. We can't always be tunnel visioned. The trouble with this subject is it can be, and I've said it, a snake pit, because certain people won't agree with certain views. They'll argue. Some will believe in a federation. They're here for the good of mankind. I don't believe they are. The evidence is quite strongly supports that, actually. One person actually wrote to me and said, well, don't worry about it. When they fire the nukes, not to frighten anyone here, they're going to stop them. They won't. They won't do a thing. The Second World War was disgraceful. They did nothing. All they did was fire their Foo Fighters around to watch. Something was watching. They didn't hurt anyone at that point then, but they were watching. So they don't give a damn.
It's fascinating. And jumping back to the theatre of war, and you'd got all these interventions throughout time, and you're talking about the Foo Fighters, and the descriptions that those pilots, those airmen gave, and people on the ground who'd seen them are very much like the orange spheres of light that people are reporting today.
Yes. Yeah, the one we saw with Grandma in 1982, it didn't tweak. It didn't tweak. It was too young. I was 13. But it was a silver sphere the size of a football. Now, it wasn't lit up. Whether that was down to it being more or less static or slow, I don't know. But it was reminiscent to the Foo Fighters because they were orbs. And I thought, well, blow me, is this some kind of electronic eye? One person on here was cruel to me. I remembered I was going to go on a radio show. And this was a prominent ufologist, I might add. Very disrespectful. And in between the pausing, the break, they were talking about this sphere, and I mentioned electronic eye, and he said, "What? Did it have eyelashes?" I was furious. Do you know, I nearly pulled the plug.
Yeah.
I thought, how dare you? You're supposed to be an eminent ufologist. They call an expert. By the way, nobody's an expert in it. They're theorists, but there's no experts at all.
Spot on.
And there he is, attacking me or making fun of, did it have eyelashes? And he was quite. It wasn't. What they'll do afterwards, they'll play victim. I was joking. They weren't. It was nasty. So at least we take a much more sensible, hopefully a serious view on this. I haven't seen anything more since 2016.
Well,
those 3 UFOs we saw were amazing. 90 feet up, close range, and never saw them again after that. That was it.
Well, I know you've told us about this before, but just share this one with us, in case anybody listening's not heard it. We've got close to 200 people watching this now, so let's tell them about these 2016.
Very strange. And these were close range. They must have tracked them. Someone tracked them. Anyway, beside that, it was the 9th, I believe it was, I can't remember all dates. I think it was the 9th of April, 2016, 11:15 p.m. It's a Saturday. It was a few days before our birthday. I do not drink, and Philip didn't drink. He was driving, and I just don't touch it. I haven't touched it for 20 years. I used to be a bit of a lad.
Neither do I. Never.
I used to knock him back. Oh, I did enjoy that, but because of health, I'm on medication. I can't really anyway. I don't miss it. Anyway, we'd come back from a party at dinner with some police officer friends of ours, and we came in the town where we live, the small town. We came to the Cow Bridge, and I noticed these 3 blazing lights. They were so bright in the sky. The first thing I thought was a helicopter or workman torches, stadium lights, something. So I wound down the window to see if it was a helicopter. There was no noise. We didn't think much of it. We carried on towards our street, and this is the honest truth. Like everything I state, I can't understand it. We drove up to our house. We could see them hanging in the sky, 3 of them. There's 3 balls of light. They're quite big. As to the size of them, I cannot remember. They were big. They were silent. They look quite angelic, actually. They're 90 feet up. Now, this is a Saturday night. We have a pub up the road. When we got out that car, there was not one soul anywhere. No one. It was dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. And these lights, they moved. I can't remember the formation. Philip can. I can't. But they moved. One moved, and then the other moved, and they stood still. They weren't drones. They looked godly, kind of angelic, very mesmerizing. And people say, why didn't you film it on your phone? Well, my God, I wished I had. And people said it's a cop-out. I couldn't. That's the furthest thing from my mind. I was mesmerized. You know when they say it's like a rabbit caught in the headlights?
Yeah.
Oh, they did it quite remarkably, but I watched them very carefully. I sent a thought up. Something to the effect of saying, my God, you're amazing. My God, we can see you. Nothing came back. Nothing. Absolutely. Didn't have any feelings from them at all. They were watching. They were right overhead, right above us. And then what they did was they started to move. I knew they were departing. It is the way they moved. Thank God I watched it. Because they formed a line, a perfect line. I gather they were absolutely mathematically, the precision of the line was incredible. Into 3, and they moved across the sky, and then
they're gone.
Now, I watched how they moved. I studied them. firstly, the first thing that comes to mind is it's like as smooth as glass. That's the first thing that comes to mind. But secondly, they're impervious to any form of friction. They're impervious to any form of friction. It's absolutely useless. This friction to them. They have command of the skies with these things. They were incredible. Now I don't know what they were doing, why they were there. I didn't feel that it was a personal thing. They were just there. And we had reports later on, much later, that they'd been seen somewhere else, and apparently they reckoned that there was a trajectory of them moving from the Isle of Scilly towards the Norfolk coast. So I don't know whether that's true or not. I wouldn't know, but they were very, very strange. And people, again, they state that it's ball lightning.
Yeah.
It's ball lightning. It's atmospheric distortion. No, these were intelligent. I wished I could remember myself personally. Me and Philip, we argue about it. They moved when they were static. One of them moved back. I don't know what they were doing. I don't know why they were moving. I don't know whether they were trying to say something, but I couldn't understand it. But
did you feel that it was for you? Did you feel it was aimed at you? And
no, I didn't. No, not at the time. And the thing is afterwards, I remembered. It was like the sound when we spoke. You know when it snowed heavily, and you have that. You go out and play, and when we were kids, and you got that muffled kind of. That's what it was like when we spoke.
Excuse me.
I got the impression. They shut that street off. Somehow they shut that off. There was not one soul, not one sound. Somehow they had done something. What I don't know exactly, but they'd shut that.
It's almost as though you're trapped into a bubble that's enveloped over the area. I call it the lower silence. That's what I've.
That's a nice word to use. Yes, it's a
strange one, isn't it?
Very bizarre.
Do you know we came from one of the conferences years ago. It'll have been one of the Awakenings. Someone tells me what first one I went to, and Andy Ramsden were driving. David Hind was with us. Can't think. Bob would have been with us, and we were in a traffic jam. We couldn't go over the Gould Bridge for some reason. There'd been an accident, and we came another road round, and we're all going nose to tail cars. And as we approached the Gould Bridge, as we're looking at it from another road, there was about 8 brilliant globes of light just hung. It's like a scaled down version of Umber Bridge, Gould Bridge, you know. And there's these 8 globes of light, and they're just moving and slowly changing shape. We'd got cameras in the boot. We definitely couldn't stop because we were in a great tail of traffic, but we'd all got mobile phones. And nobody thought we were mesmerized. Andy couldn't pull over. Because we'd have stopped everything. And and I look upon that sighting as really special because it were a really unusual sequence. It almost hung like globes on from a chandelier. Do you know that? And there were about 8 of them. And slowly moving and changing shape, but well in the air, but not in the heavens.
Yeah, our niece filmed them approaching where she said that she saw the UFOs. I forgot to mention our niece Charlie, because we were all together at this party. She had to go to Marston, I believe.
Right.
And she saw them in the sky first, and she filmed them. Jason Gleaves, the wonderful artist and author and UFO researcher, smashing guy, lovely, lovely gentleman. Jason Gleaves, love that man to bits. He analysed them, and they're independent. They're unusual. They're not aircraft. She filmed them, and when they were above our heads, 90 feet up, I estimate it was 90 feet up, they were right above us. Very godly, very angelic. And I'm not religious, by the way. Philip's phone was ringing. He wouldn't answer it. It was her telling her, "Have you seen the bleep UFOs? They were right above us. They were hanging there for some time. A few minutes, perhaps at most 3, I don't know, 2-3 minutes. They were hanging there. Have you seen them?" But we couldn't. You're right, Paul. You're mesmerized.
You're just caught,
yeah.
And you know, you touched on something else as well. You said how fluid they were when they moved away. And although this isn't like a carbon copy of the sameness, if that's even a word, which it isn't, we look at other aspects of the unexplained, and there's so many similarities. Even if a UFO is nothing like a cryptid, you'll get a lot of reports from people seeing these, well, say Bigfoot, and it moved. Fluid is the word. Myself and Les, we interviewed a guy a few weeks ago, great guy, Steve. And if you're watching this, Steve, we really appreciate you sharing that amazing account with us. But he said it moved. I was fascinated with a brief encounter, 5 to 10 second sighting. He said, but it just moved. It was so huge, but it just moved fluently. And you use the word fluent. And I wonder if we're using the same exotic science, even if it's something million miles away from a UFO, because there's something different about these creatures that separates them from a normal flesh and blood, in my opinion. But you used the word fluid, and I just thought, well, yeah, that's what Steve used. It was fluid. And you hear other people saying they look like they're on conveyor belts as they're moving. It's just something different. So some kind of science.
I stated in Illusions that now, before all this, not the UFOs, certainly not them, but the cryptids, they're always more than not preceded by these little wispy balls of light.
Yeah.
And I stated that that's probably the force itself, that's them. This is a manifestation of what they become from these balls of light. It's possible.
I think it's possible.
Because looking back, the fairy lights, Disney used them. Certainly in Sleeping Beauty, they used the little lights as the fairies. You know, the little twinkles of light, supernatural things. I wonder if that's them. That's the force building up or manifesting into these things. And another interesting point I thought of, personally, I might well be wrong, is that the cattle injuries, they take mainly the blood. There are other pieces removed, of course, but I did wonder, thinking outside the box, is it possible that whatever's doing this is only one theory, requires some kind of material to manifest these things, to build them? You will notice that when people report them, they're never seen afterwards, and they don't stay in our airspace for long. Certainly UFOs don't. Nothing seems to stay in our airspace for long unless they're downed or crashed. But it's something to think about. It's something to ponder over, most certainly. But I concluded, is it possible that something requires this kind of material? Skinwalker Ranch comes to mind. I think they were the Sutton family. I might be wrong there. The family that owned it before it was taken over by the scientific establishment.
It might have been the Gorman family. I'm not. Yeah, maybe.
Right.
But
the
anyway.
family who saw the huge wolf approach him. The great big huge wolf. He walked down to them one day, and he was massive, and he snaked along. So it's a kind of friendly manner. He's coming along to them. He's got beautiful eyes, and if this is to be believed, which I believe there is something to it, and he allowed them to pet him. They were brave enough, one of them, to pet him, but he was interested in the cow pen, the calf. So he went and started attacking the calf, and they got the shotguns out and shot it. Didn't have any effect on it. It did dislodge a piece of flesh, and that's it. And then he scarpered. He started to trot off. So they followed him, and they carried on. And because it was, I gather it was marshy or wet or whatever, they followed this trail to a certain point, and he vanished. Just vanished. He'd gone. It's as if he'd just vanished into thin air. We went back to look at this piece of flesh. It was rotten.
Yeah, it deteriorated.
I thought about that. It's a time displacement. Is it possible that where this thing is from is a different time from ours? It may strengthen the case that it's quite feasible this thing is interdimensional, from a different reality than ours, because flesh doesn't rot that quickly.
No.
Certainly not. And my goodness, so they are made. If this is to be believed, we can assume they are temporarily flesh and blood, or made of flesh and blood, or are flesh and blood. But I can't understand why it would come into our realm and then disappear, unless it was some great experiment, or it was to induce fear, an intriguing fear, something. Because if we look at the cases,
go on. Well, unless there's genuine thin areas around the world where these things slip in and out, and they're not doing it for any scientific means. They're just transient and slipping in and out. Do you know, with a lady who me and Chris Turner have filmed, Lisa, she comes in chat sometimes if she's in tonight. Hi, Lisa. I'm not sure if she is, but she was with her husband at Speeton. And I'm not saying this is a portal or any name that somebody would want to call it, but they'd gone for a walk on a summer's day. People have heard me talk about this. And as they're walking up the beach, little boy playing football, and they can see an oval-shaped, shimmering light, independent of the sand, 3 foot off the ground, 4 foot off the ground, 30-inch deep, 18 inch to 2 foot wide. And they're looking round it. I would have been tempted to put my hand in it. I really would. She said at one time, before they got up to it, the little boy nearly ran into it. He seemed oblivious to it. And Lisa and her partner looked around this. She says, I'm looking up the cliffs thinking somebody's got some kind of mirror and reflecting this, even though it couldn't have been because it'd need something to reflect off.
Yes.
And it just totally. So what did they encounter that day? And they're in an area, because I'll shut up in a moment because it's your show, but they're in an area. I'll state, if somebody said to me, where in East Yorkshire would you choose if you were going to say the most unexplained phenomena took place? I'd say Speeton every time, because it gets so little footfall and we get loads of reports in that area. But so they're in an area where there's a lot of activity. Is that the reason things passing through, slipping in and out? I don't know.
I mean, David Icke has got a very fascinating opinion to that. It's a hologram. It's holographic.
There's a question, so we'll do that one now. Yeah,
It's quite possible, yes.
Yeah. So are we living in a hologram?
It intrigues me to see that a number of scientists, one in particular I read about, I can't remember his name, suggests just that we are actually in a world that's not really real. It's like, well, are we real, really? I know the obvious question will be laughed at, but when you think about the atomic level that we've discussed earlier, the atomic structure, it's basically just a lot of it's empty space.
Yeah.
You know, and everything, you know, is there a master of it? A master magician? Or are we in a hologram where things can be introduced? Are we in a great experiment? Are we being visited by genuine aliens, you know, or, you know, interdimensional creatures that seem to accidentally slip through? I don't believe that, by the way. I don't think that's accidental.
No, I mean, you get people who say, ask the universe and it will answer what you want, kind of thing, give you what you want. And it kind of makes you wonder. I'm not saying that that's correct, but we all, to some degree, achieve what we want in life. And some of the things that we achieve and paths we go down are absolutely tragic, aren't they? Let's face it.
Yes.
But
yes.
we're sort of masters of our own destiny, and if we set out wanting to do something, we if you're really intent, you usually achieve it, unless we're talking about genetic superiors and superior runners and things like that, because I think people like that are born. You know,
Yes,
champions
yes.
are born in sport, not made. But you know, that's another road to go down. But I wonder if anything's aiding us, or whether we can actually evoke our own success. Does that sound too crazy? I don't know.
No, I mean, we have the audacity, the gall, to state that these things aren't real when we can't even understand the universe. We don't know what we're in. They call it space. We've called it space. We've defined names for these things. Everything is from our own definitions, where these things that are coming in, we have no definitions for understanding. I think it's quite arrogant. I remembered when I was at school, the teacher there, the physics teacher, they were talking about the Big Bang. And I actually questioned him. I said, but sir, what caused the Big Bang? He told me, you don't question. You just accept this. It was the Big Bang. But what caused the Big Bang? I didn't think of it then. I was too young. But I was intrigued enough to ask what started this Big Bang. And then I realized something doesn't come from nothing. There's got to be something. If it's material, it has to originate from somewhere. And, you know, this, and they're still harping on about it. Excuse me. They're still harping on about the Big Bang when they've got no idea. I think this James Webb Space Telescope is opening some eyes or raising some eyebrows because they're not getting the data they expected. No, they're trying to find the edge or the beginning of the universe. They're not going to find it because I estimated that it's much bigger than we can give any kind of credit for, you know. And I appreciate we can only theorize. That's all we have. But I don't think it was a Big Bang. I mean, planets or quasars and things, they exist, and there are black holes and there are explosions, but you're talking about the whole of creation. We don't even know what that is. What are we inside? This is what they're afraid to acknowledge, because they've got no comprehension of it, and this is a monster in the box for them, because infinity.
Well,
They say the word, but they can't comprehend infinity, never ending. They just can't do it. We can't, because we've always built upon containers. We're on the earth, we're contained in that. Everything is preset. Everything is understandable to a degree. So when you look at that, it's a completely different kettle of fish entirely,
Absolutely brilliant. In a moment, I'll give Les a shout. I just want to just put one thing out. We did a short earlier in the week, and we just touched on the Silpho saucer, which allegedly crashed in November 1957 on Silpho Moor, quite close to where I live. Allegedly a hoax, and I think everything points to it being a hoax. However, an incredible one at that. But somebody in the chat, in the questions, said my grandma was witness to that. Could have been a light-hearted or tongue-in-cheek remark, but I'd love to speak to you. If you know what I mean, I'd love to speak to you. If you're in chat and you hear this, contact me, Paul Sinclair, ilf@gmail.com. And I'm going to ask Les, are we good for some questions, Ronnie? Yeah, I think we are.
Yeah. And great show so far, guys. And we've got some great questions in. But first, I just want to mention a couple of things to you, Ronnie, is that you brought up earlier about being in situations where sightings are unfolding in front of you in the skies, but nobody bothers to film. Now, there's a great big percentage of people who don't film. Now, is that something which you think is something implanted in that person's or group of people's minds at that time?
That's a very, very good point. Possibly. It's quite possible. I mean, I stated that it's like a rabbit staring into the oncoming headlights of a vehicle. We're stunned. Yes, it's quite plausible. I had no gumption to put my phone up, frightened of missing them. They were so godly. It sounds terrible me saying that, and it makes me sound religious, but that's the only impression I got. They look godly. So godly, so angelic is the word, angelic.
Yeah.
But I got nothing from them. But thank God I watched them move. I studied them very carefully. Philip is a little bit more excitable than me. I'm much calmer than him. He's like a chimpanzee racing off and jumping about, whereas I'm much calmer. So, we're both there and we're both seeing the same thing. But he was just absolutely bowled over by it. But I was calm because I sent that thing, my God, and I got nothing back. But I watched how they moved, and he did answer his phone eventually going in, and it was our niece, and he made a point of logging it on Facebook. He was so excited. He made a log so that it would be catalogued, so that we wouldn't forget it, you see. So I didn't. I just kept thinking, what the hell were they? What do they want? What were they? Where they're from? But they must have surely been tracked. Surely. Someone knows about them.
How often did you speak about it between yourselves?
It's a subject that we talk about today. Sometimes it just crops up. I mean, the sad thing is, the only thing we have is memories now. And they were 90 feet up. I've seen programs where people have seen, not to be disrespectful, and they're probably remarkable in themselves, pinpricks of light moving and zigzagging, but these were right above our heads. It did not feel personal. I don't know what Philip's feelings are on that. I don't know. But to me, they didn't feel personal. It wasn't a personal thing. They were just there. But at the same token, why? I don't know. I can't. I'm absolutely, I'm going to use a word from Sherlock Holmes, confounded. My dear Watson, confounded.
Excellent.
And thanks for that, Ronnie. Just something else as well, listening to you earlier on, Ronnie, which sparks my mind. You talked about inaccessible places like the South Pole, and we don't know what's there, we don't know what they're doing there. You talked about the so-called aliens or whatever other entities that didn't intervene in World War II, and you said that was disgraceful, disgusting. I'm just paraphrasing you there, Ronnie.
Yeah.
And then you talked about disclosure, yeah, and you'd said that is never going to happen. Now here's a theory. I'm just going to put it out there. Stamp on me all you will for this. What if, right, the people in power, you give them a name, the cabal, the overlords, whatever. What if they are the aliens?
I'm beginning to believe that more and more now, especially with what's going on. No empathy, really, is there? There doesn't seem to be any empathy. A very good point. You don't know. I said that brings to mind, that's wonderful, because it brings to mind The Invaders, the film The Invaders, where everything was all done underhandedly. David Vincent, I believe that was his name, who was trying to wake people up to this fact that they were here amongst us, and they were. And no one knew. It's like everyone was asleep, or they just didn't want to know, until they encountered them. Yes, it's quite possible. Actually, I did wonder, a disturbing thought that came to me a few days ago, to do with the situation at the moment. I'll put that delicately,
Yeah.
with our own lovely race of people, mostly. It's the fact there are alleged plans to seal parts of the Earth off in the future. Now, I did wonder: have they made a pact with something? Because either that made a pact with something that needed it. I mean, if you think about our planet, if they were physical like us, it's quite precious, very precious in this sector. I mean, they're talking about other planets that discovered Earth, like we can take that with a pinch of salt, because they're always so damn far away, billions of light years away, but they're there. But they're unreachable, so it's comfortable to announce it. Is it possible that they have made a pact with the devil, and that certain pieces of criteria need to be implemented to exceed or accelerate this agenda to get them in? But I was just interesting, and of course, if you were in contact, if you're the powers that be in contact with a superior race, you're going to bend over backwards for them, especially if they promise them certain things. It's only hypothetical. It would sound, thankfully or mercifully to them, like science fiction. But I wonder, sometimes science fiction becomes science fact.
Yeah.
It was just a thought that have they made a pact with something?
I'd kind of wonder why they'd have to bargain with us. Why is something so superior? Why would it have to bargain with us? I don't know.
Well, to kill off a species is very difficult, People seem to think that even nuclear weapons can kill off everyone, but it won't kill off everyone. People will survive. It makes me laugh when they say, why don't aliens come along and just kill us all off? It's not as easy as that. It's a massive planet. And you take this into consideration, what is it, an all-out invasion? H.G. Wells demonstrated that quite beautifully in War of the Worlds, where they were defeated by a simple bacteria, germ, the common cold. But people still survive the onslaught. You will have survivors. I think if there was an intelligent, superior race amongst us, and that had negotiated with the powers that be for something, they would be very smart, patient, perhaps not so patient, in line up to an acceleration of a supposed agenda, and very skilled. They do it professionally, of course.
Okay, right. It's us with another question then, Les.
Ain't got to the questions yet, Paul. Another theory from me on this one, Ron, is that probably a lot of this is underground. I mean, physically underground. Because you've heard of military, obviously, installation has been underground.
Yes, I believe
Area 51 is mostly underground, supposedly. What if there is another world underground completely?
Yeah, it's quite possible. Admiral Byrd described that, didn't he, when he flew over the Antarctica? He saw things that were beyond his imagination, and they kept it quiet, didn't they? I think he did come out with it, but he was such an influential chap. It was so bizarre. So he described a world below ours. So it
Yeah.
is quite possible. Yes, I'm not going to discount that at all. We just don't know what we're dealing with, and I think it's wonderful that we can bash so many ideas around to try and form some kind of idea. But you see, the trouble with a lot of people is that they're fixated on the laws of the Federation, which I don't know where they've got that from, or this and that. They know where the Greys are. They've told them this, they've told them that. How can you trust any of them? You see, another pattern I noticed with these alleged Greys is the fact that a number of people who were taken up and abducted by them, they were shown cases of the end of the world, always negative, destruction, nuclear war. And then you have another lot, they're telling them or preaching to them their concerns for the natural environment. This was in vogue in the 90s, the environmental issues. They've done nothing. And why would they just nab anyone up for
Yeah.
these concerns? All right, they can publish books, but if you're not, I'm going to say it respectfully, if you're not influential enough, like a politician, well, can they be trusted? You know what I mean? Any of those, there's no way around it. You're not going to get anywhere. So are they making us look this way and that way when we're not looking this way?
Yeah.
What is it they're doing? You know, it's very, very intriguing.
Right, I'm going to bring a question up, Ronnie, from Zeno, if I've got that pronunciation probably wrong. Ronnie, can I ask you, what age did your experiences start, and whether there are any experiences in your family?
There are indeed, yes. The experiences started. Now, I released this in Illusions called The Bug at Bignell. We lived on the property of Bignell House. We were toddlers, 4 or 5, and there was the. Thank you, Paul.
Well, it's a good book, Illusions.
Oh, thank you. Well, I question everything in it. I assure you, I question. I don't know what it was. I was picking open this flower. As a kid, you were curious, and there's this like polystyrene stuff in it. It looked like polystyrene to me. I wouldn't know what polystyrene was then, but it looked kind of artificial. And this little thing jumped out. It was a bug, and all of a sudden it became big. It was a praying mantis. They would have been taller than us. I can't remember if it had wings or not. I think I illustrated it with wings, but it made a kind of clicking sound when it moved, and we were horrified. We ran screaming from it, and it followed us. It was blurry when it moved. I didn't publish it in the Digital Demon because I thought it was so outlandish, and I said to Philip, we can't include that because it doesn't make any sense. Well, do the others make any sense? So that's why I came out with it in Illusions, The Bug at Bignell. But you see, that's when it started. But after that, I have no memory really until the Sphere with Grandma in 1982, and then so on, the alleged doctors. Now, what's interesting about that is the doctors. I had a fear, most kids did, of doctors and policemen. Anything of authority. So were they portrayed in that kind of get-up to ensure compliance? Well, they certainly got it from me, that's for sure. And when they spoke, it was fluent English. It was British, the Queen's English, middle-aged authority. I didn't see him. I couldn't see him behind me, but he spoke. They said, did he speak or was it telepathy? I don't know, because they were armored. I couldn't see them, but it's interesting, isn't it? The fear. Yeah. This is another thing that so yes. And as for family members, it's a very good question. Thank you. A relative of mine, a little boy, I can't give his name out. I won't. He saw, when he was younger, he reported a little man walking into his room at night. I think he was a dark little man, or black. And he used to sit on the shelf and talk to him. Now, he was frightened of this to begin with, but they spoke. And do you know what? I have tried everything I can to prise this out of him. And he just will not. He clams up. I've given up, because I wanted it as material for my book, for Illusions. I can get nothing from him. So, and I wouldn't have used his name. I would have.
And do you mean to prise it out of him? You mean you want to know what they spoke about?
Yes, what it looked like, what they were doing, what it was doing, what he was talking about. He was frightened of it to begin with, because he told his mum that he has a visit from this little man. He called it a little man, all dark, and he used to climb up on the shelf and sit there and talk to him. Yeah. That's very bizarre. And again, the family member, she told me that she knew there was something different and wrong. This is not TV, it's not imagination. It's like us, isn't it? Something very bizarre. He used to sit on his shop. I can't get anything from him. It's a complete and utter blank. He's clammed up, or whether they have managed to strip it from his mind, I don't know. But very bizarre.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Go on, Les.
Thanks for that, Ronnie. Brett Biro, artist. Hi to Ronald and
Hello,
Paul. Yeah, has Ronald had any strange experiences at any of the UFO conventions he has been to? And have you, Paul, had any experiences?
Met some strange people.
Yeah.
No, just not. For most part, everything's been good when I've been to these conferences. I've enjoyed them. So not really. I believe somebody said that they'd seen something when I was doing the talk at the Darker Side of Ufology.
Yeah.
Move across the stage, but I never saw anything, and nobody produced any phone footage, and the talks were filmed. So I'm sure if there was something there, I don't know about you. Over to you then, Ronnie.
No, I've never seen anything to mind, anything unusual at any of the conferences, conventions. No, nothing. I'm just trying. No, nothing. No, it's very, as I said, it's, when I've reported these in the books, in an hour or two, it seems quite a lot. But when you actually narrow it down to a lifespan, or half a lifespan, or 3/4, however long I'm here for, it's quite minimal. I haven't seen anything since 2016. I've had some strange psychic things happen to me, though. This is to do with the future. And what's interesting and what confuses me, and I wish people could help me with this, because I actually denounce time travel in illusions. And I do it for good reason. And people will immediately say you're wrong. But you see, H.G. Wells came up with a beautiful notion of traveling through the fabric of time and space. It's time itself. But we must understand that man created time. We created time. It is merely a measurement. It's nothing more. It's ethereal. There's no such thing as time. We are living in the present. We are always, I mentioned this in the book, Illusions. We are constantly in the present. We have created words to describe the past, so we understand it as prior to the future, which is ahead of us. How can you drive a machine through something that is ethereal? There's nothing to it. There is, I believe, something else, but it's not to do with time. And I found out when I did this in Illusions, I'm going to get flack for this, just as I am about artificial intelligence. That's a big misconception, completely big misconception, and for good reason. There's no such thing as true artificial intelligence. It doesn't exist. Computers are not intelligent. They never have been. I dare say that in the future they may develop a system that can think. That means to understand. It will become then classed as a sentient being. Then would you offer it civil rights? But going back to time travel, this concept of, it brings in something that contested it. And I was thrown. And what happened was, and I've been told I'm psychic, but I couldn't raise the skin of a rice pudding. I went to Circle for years and I got nothing. I got drunk once. Someone said, you need to loosen up. This is when I did drink. You need to loosen up and go there. So I drank. Well, actually, I enjoyed it back then, about 20 odd years ago. I downed a bottle of red wine and beers as well, and I went there quite merry. The medium could smell it on my breath. She didn't say anything. She was lovely. And I sat there and I could get absolutely nothing through. There were certainly spirits rising there.
You just took it out of my mouth. I was going to say there were plenty of spirits inside you, weren't there?
I couldn't get anything through for 3 or 4 years. I can't remember. I sat and I got nothing. But it was in my 50s that it started. And what's interesting, these are things that flash before me and I see it and then it's gone, but they come true, only little things. And one of them was I was speaking to this chap in New York. I didn't know him, chap, for our radio show then. We don't do it anymore. We burnt ourselves out, sadly, but it was a Paranormal UK show. And he was telling me about these experiences, and it was a good line to America. I couldn't see him, and I kept seeing all this sand everywhere. And it's a good job I mentioned it because I nearly passed it up. because I kept saying it was so prevalent. I said, William, that was his name, William, I'm seeing all this sand. Does it mean anything? I've got to just say it, because it wouldn't go, it wouldn't shift this sand. No. When I got back from work on Monday, I had a number of emails from him. He showed me photographs, sand, everywhere, all over the place. He said, you know what, Ronnie, you're never going to believe this. He said, I've never worked with sand like this. You've seen a piece of the future. So you see why this conflicts with my theory of time travel. I also saw Nicola Sturgeon resigning long before it happened. I wasn't thinking of her. I wasn't interested in her. No disrespect. People have views about that. I'm not going to get involved with politics. I don't want to. But the point is, I saw her resigning. Blow me, she resigned. So I'm seeing fragments of the future or potential pieces of the now which unfold. It's very, very deep what I've written about, but I do go into this. Although I denounce time travel, I'm confounded by that, and you have to give me it. I'm trying to understand it. You can't just jump in and say it's real. We go back then, because I've done all my research into this, of the Charlie Chaplin incident. The woman, or supposed woman, outside with the thing, she's fiddling with it and talking to it. Well, they did have hearing aids then. There were hearing aids, even then. Batteries, they had batteries. There was another picture of, could be adjusting it or testing it, I don't know. But, you know, it's in it. I could be wrong. I'm not saying that's factual, because I respect other people's opinions and I don't want to, tarnish their own research. There was also another one which is interesting, and I'm one for these, trying to pick out the faults with them. There was this group of, they look like cowboys or something, I don't know, the late 1890s, when they had a camera. I can't remember when the camera was first developed. I know they had recording equipment. In the late 1800s, they had recording equipment. They did. They developed.
It wouldn't look like what we've got today, though.
No, but it could record, and it was very fragile. What it was recorded on the tin paper or the tin, but they did it. They were very clever. So they got this picture of all these people all together in this group, and a time traveler has appeared in the middle. Well, I thought, well, it's very convenient that we're leaving a nice little spot for him. It's just materialized there. They've left all of them huddled together, but they've left a spot for him. These are obvious pointers which people don't, not all of them, they immediately state, how dare you? But you're questioning the very validity of this, and you have to. In order to get to a rational or a clearer picture, you must be judgmental. It's like time travel. He's wrong. Immediately, I bet some people said he's wrong. But what research have you done into it? The Philadelphia experiment. USS Eldridge, wasn't it? The ship that apparently disappeared.
Yeah.
Now, I believe it might be possible that they were messing with magnetic waves, but that's not the whole true story, what you're hearing. This is fabrication. Something did happen. It shifted. Apparently, the crew members were embedded in the metal. That might be possible.
In the boat, yeah.
Yeah, because of the shift of its physical makeup. It's being shifted. Something was interfering with it. There was they were tampering with things they did not understand. So I don't believe it went through time, but I certainly do believe, and I don't believe it was rendered invisible. They couldn't do that, but they did something to that ship. I do believe that case is, there's something to it. They did something that completely reduced the molecular structure into nothing, and then rematerializing again quickly, then again and again. So it absolutely buggered the whole thing up. They'll say that's time travel, but you need to look into these.
Yeah, thanks.
Before you know.
And a bit of a glitch there in the time there. Well, I saw Les speaking and he didn't speak. So go on, Les.
Okay, I've got another question from Dragonborn. Evening, Ronnie. I know Paul asked this question earlier on in the show. A similar question. Have your experiences along with your brother changed your views of life?
Yes. Thank you, Dragonborn. Yes, it has. Because it's opened my eyes to the fact that we are not masters of this earth, and we're certainly not masters of what we call space. We have the gall, as I stated, to state that there are no such things, and yet we can't describe many things. And if we do, we try and, like the Big Bang. That's a prime example. It becomes dogmatic, is dogmatized, so you will believe it started from Genesis, the Big Bang. I don't believe that. And it's like many other things, these UFOs, I believe there's something foreign to us here. We have something with us, or many things, which we can't describe or understand. And I admire the people like yourselves and many other researchers who look into this and are open-minded. They're not tunnel-visioned to this, that, and the other. You know, they're open-minded to all sorts. If they said to me that they are actually aliens, the Roswell was from a planet X, I'd welcome it. I'd love them for it. That's great. It's solved. Or if they said that it didn't happen, they've got concrete proof that it didn't happen. That's fair enough. You know, I've got no ego to bruise at all. It's just looking into these things. But there is something to it, because there's no smoke without fire. These things did happen. And no matter how people publish books, the truth, yes, it's based on their own narratives. And
Yeah.
God knows, and we know there are many narratives, especially to that. But I personally believe, I'll just state this for the record, that something crashed there, a spaceship, an exotic craft from an unknown, origin, and there were pilots, because I believe that actually did happen. I stand firm on that. Absolutely.
Thank
I
you.
trust it. It's in here. It's in the gut feeling of truth. There's something happened there, something very odd.
Okay, I just want to put this on the screen, not a question, but Mark Anderson, I was on Ronnie's show last year and he was a perfect gentleman. Can't believe anyone would be disrespectful to such a good man.
Oh, thank you, Mark. That's very kind of you. Yes. Very kind. Thank you very much. We do have our enemies. You get people who don't like you because, I don't know, just for breathing. I mean, but the good thing is, even Jesus had enemies, and he was a nice man. I mean that respectfully, Mark.
Oh God, yeah. I hope they don't do what they did to him to us. I mean, we've been to conferences and we've come up against it, haven't we? Without naming names or anything. But there's one thing to be said, and Les knows this. You and Philip, I don't hear you talk derogatory about anybody. And what you're doing, you're expressing your views, your opinions. You might not be right, but you hold your hands up and say, I might not be right. And that's all we're all doing. Some people just can't accept that. And it's a shame, really, because they're that sort of regimented into their way of thinking. But that's the way of it.
Yes.
So what we got here, a question, Les?
1423, yeah, we hear of multi-phenomena areas all over the world. People might report observing phenomena in Australia or Peru that often match those observed in the UK. So where are these entities coming from?
Like the Greys, I suggested that they became in vogue. I mean, you could well argue the same about the style of temples created by our ancestors. The pyramid was quite popular, although the distances of these cultures were so vast, they couldn't have copied them from line of sight. They couldn't travel very well. We're talking about the Mayans and the Egyptians and the Incas. They all followed the pattern. So is it possible that these are doing the same thing? That's a very interesting question, 1423. Yes, we don't know, but it's very strange, isn't it, how these cultures adopted advanced technologies themselves, the Mayans, the Egyptians, the Incas, all of them, all over the world.
And the same types of entities that they encountered and documented, even carved in stone, are very similar all over the world, aren't they? Before we could have known each other.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes, the Mayans worshipped the feathered serpent, Calcucan. And that was in Mexico. They even developed a temple based on him, El Castillo, the serpent temple, in a shrine to their deity. But I sometimes wonder if they had actually a visitor.
Okay, I think we've just
whether Calcucan, the feathered serpent I mentioned in the Digital Demon, refers to flight and a reptilian. So it means that they could fly. Was that their interpretation of these things, that they had spaceships and they were reptilian? I don't know.
Good point.
Thanks for that.
I just want to say hello to my daughter Laura. I can see you in chat. I know there's loads of names: Deb Shaw, Rick Allen, Dragonborn. We've done Peter Armstrong, just Adam Sander. I'm just sorry for missing names out, guys. Me and Les, we just value your support. Welsh Wind. Away you go, Les. Sorry.
Johnny Alexander. Hi, Ronnie. A question. Are you aware of the work done by Dr. Segala and the equipment he has developed for detecting anomalous phenomena?
No, I'm not, but I'm sure it's admirable of what the good doctor is doing. Any kind of research into this is welcomed. If it can produce some kind of positive results.
Yeah, we had him on our show, and then Paul will tell you a little bit more.
Well, no, you know as much about this as me, Les. He's been on several times. Jim Segala, and what a great guy, absolutely. And what I found interesting, and people in chat will remember this, and Les will, when we first spoke to him and he first got involved at Skinwalker, he'd had no experiences. He were very clinical in what he were talking about, and the second time he's had his own experiences or
That's
experience. Yeah, but the equipment that he's using, we've got a friend who only lives in Bridlington, so he's the same town as me, a few miles from Les, and he's developed some equipment very similar to what Jim's using, and they're placing these pieces of equipment in different people's with different people, and it measures all sorts of things electronically before an event.
Yes,
It's
that's
brilliant.
fascinating. But they mentioned, didn't he, with the chap who he was at Skinwalker Ranch and Jim, and he came away and he's had experiences, I gather, you're stating.
I don't know if he's had them away or whether he's had them at Skinwalker, so I don't want to get that bit wrong. But I know
the
now.
Hitchhiker effect was mentioned, wasn't it, by Rob? Is it Rob? One of them mentioned.
Bigelow, is
That's
it?
right.
I don't know. Is the
Hitchhiker effect it has, yes.
And that's an interesting one. We'll touch on that in a moment. But yeah, it's fascinating. And when we say we've got a guy in Bridlington who's developed some of this equipment, it's not somebody just sat tinkering with a soldering iron in his shed. This is high-end equipment. We know that because some of the stuff that they're using at the said ranch, his friends developed it, and he's been bench testing some of the other equipment that they've since developed. Am I right, Les?
Yeah, in so much as we've already done a sequence of filming with him, and we've had good results, and you'll see all that on
unbelievable results.
Wolflands 2 video when it comes out. Yeah,
I wish we could think of another name for it, but we will.
Okay,
Yeah,
this Karen Beeman question for Ronnie and Paul: do you feel more in tune and intuitive in and around certain people and in certain places since your interactions with the phenomena? That's a good question.
I'll quickly answer it, and then we'll hand it to Ronnie. I do. You know that certain nights when you're on those cliff tops, something's going to happen. You can feel the buzz, and I think that certain people can kind of evoke it a little bit. But over to you, Ron. You don't have to agree with me.
I don't know. I can't. I'm going to be honest. I don't know. But certainly, I seem to have. I think we all have intuition of people. Sometimes I can be wrong about them, but I don't know. I can't answer that. I'm so sorry. I can't. I don't know.
No, that's just good enough, isn't it?
So then,
well, thank you, Karen. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Karen. Zeno, is it possible every incident is from the future version of an AI singular consciousness that is sending these things back to ensure we create it in our current time to ensure its creation?
I have never doubted true artificial intelligence. It will come about. And if it's what we call from the future, no pun intended, but there might well be that. I mean, this is only a hypothesis I've created in there. It's quite possible. It's very interesting, that point here. It's the fact that I suggested that the phenomena appears to be unable to create duplicates exactly, as an artist would, the same kind of character. They always differ. It can't maintain or seem to maintain consistency. So it's quite possible. And I like that. A consciousness that is sending these things back to ensure we create it in our current time to ensure. Well, that would give it the status almost of a god, wouldn't it? An electronic god. Who knows?
It's title for your new book.
Yeah, it's quite poetic. That. Thank you. I like that. Yes, it is plausible. Yes, quite plausible. Who knows?
And Zeno has another question. Maintaining my hypothesis, would you agree the entity, if engineering our current matrix, continue to adapt their appearance through the ages to match what it thinks we need to see?
I would agree.
So that's going back to the theory.
Yes, that's a good point, because they're always a little bit out of reality, aren't they? They in order, these reptilians and greys, they're quite embryonic. The greys, the werewolves are more primal. Bigfoot and all that, but it could be engineered. the current matrix, or what it's able to conjure, what it can do. You see, there's one thing that I have touched on with this phenomena. If it is a kind of force or an AI of the future, which is quite possible, we have to look at all aspects of this. It seems to lack a degree of imagination. It can adapt, it can jump on what it's learning and advance, but it's quite unable to actually be artistic or imaginative.
Do you mean beyond what we put into it?
Yes, it is taking snippets of what we believe, folklore, science fiction,
I
all
don't
that. This is just
suppose.
one aspect of it.
I don't suppose it can think outside of that. The only time that AI will be able to think outside of that, unless it becomes a conscious sentient
Yes.
entity in its own right, is it can only advance as we advance. So as if we
Yes.
discover new things and new ways of thinking, and we can input that, then it can create. But at the moment, it can't advance any further than our level of thinking and creativeness, surely.
Yes, that's a very good question. I love these because they make you think, don't they? That's a very good
Yeah,
point, actually. And as I stated, the current AI we have is amazing. I will state the algorithms employed, it is amazing, but they are not true artificial intelligent sentient beings. They cannot think, it cannot understand what is being given, it cannot learn what is being given. But they're again from the future. If time travel is possible, then yes, these would have advanced to the true wonderful machines that I'm talking about that are sentient beings to a degree, like Hal from 2001: A Space Odyssey. He was a sentient being almost because he could think. He could actually, he's almost human, so it's quite possible that what this gentleman is stating is quite a possibility. It's engineering some kind of matrix. Who knows? I mean, that's the wonderful thing about this phenomena. We're looking at every aspect of it, or quite a few.
What
of them.
about you said earlier that you've not sold on the idea of time travel, and I'm not saying I am, but
No.
here's one. I don't even know if I can put it over right. What's sort of occurring in my mind? I'm thinking about it. But what if the premonitions that you're getting, other people get, and you see the future, are from you in the future, and you've just got this genetic trait, this throwback, this memory, this. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, I get what you mean.
Wild
I think
theory.
it's possible. It's possible, and that would tie in with deja vu, wouldn't it? Because I had a lot of that when I was a kid. Loads of times. It seemed to wean from when I was in my 20s. I still had it, but it's gradually winding down as you get older. But it's quite possible. That's an interesting point as well. See, I love these chats because we open all the boxes.
Have we got any more questions, Les?
Yeah, well, I've just got a little point here myself about AI, right?
Go on then.
And I'll put this in front of you, Ronnie, and you can pick it apart as you wish. I'm assuming, I'm probably got this wrong, I'm assuming that the present AI that we know of, that would go online and tell it to produce a picture, what you've been alluding to, Ronnie. So the AI then, let's say the AI picks, you put that prompt in, you might put man, you might put walking, you might put dog, right? So it'll go and find every picture that's been uploaded, possibly at any point, during the internet life, whatever still out there. And it'll go and find this match of, say, 10 pixels, 10 pixels there, 10 pixels there. Well, now it's building up a picture, okay, with your prompts.
Yeah.
And also, what if then the prompts, if you put in that prompt, something, and not only that, it's probably got millions of pictures from art galleries in there.
That's where it's getting it from. A pool of
You see where I'm going? It's got a pool of everything.
Yeah.
So what if the AI developed and said, I've got this group of pixels and I've got another group, but I can make it better for you. I can make that picture more clearer. I can make that picture less contrasty. I can make this sun. Is that thinking AI, Ronnie? Is that AI thinking?
No, because it requires the command, the prompts, and it requires also a platform. If it was true AI, it wouldn't need to dip into reservoirs of art. It would be able to develop it itself. Just as music and writing, it has to have a platform. True AI is when it actually thinks for itself and paints itself. These are not doing that. It cannot do it at the moment. As I said, I dare say later on in the future, it might well be able to when they bypass binary. I hardly think they could create an intelligent being from zeros and ones. Even the quantum realm, the systems they developed they're not unique at the moment because they're highly expensive and they're not compatible. But all they do, all we're talking about is speed. It's not thought or rational thought at all. It's processing speed. The quantum systems, they can develop a 0, a 1, or either. That's why they call it 3D thinking, but the acronym has completely been misplaced. It's not thinking at all, it's 3D processing. Until we have develop a machine that is beyond binary, I would perhaps imagine bacteria or something perhaps a little bit more organic, we might be able to generate in the future a true thinking machine. These cannot think. You know, I had computer courses. We were born in the golden age of them when they first came out to program them. I'm programming them now. I'm developing a game. I understand them very well, the algorithms, but they cannot think. They process, but they cannot think. It doesn't understand. It doesn't understand because these commands are based on algorithms. And until we bypass the algorithms for actually to generate an actual independent intelligence, we're not going to have it.
Okay.
Okay, that kind of sums it up. So I know exactly what you're saying now, Ronnie. Mark Anderson, Ron, this may be a different type of AI. The type of AI hallucinates by default. Any form of AGI or ASI is likely to be different.
I don't understand that question. I'm sorry.
I don't understand that one.
No.
So,
well,
sorry,
thanks, Mark. Anyway,
Mark.
so
Have
we done with questions for a moment, Les, or have we?
I've got some more, lots more.
Go on then.
Tino, hello, Ronnie. Do you have any thoughts on the crypto-terrestrials, inner Earth, kind of what I was talking about earlier, and cavern system beings?
Yes. I mean, I'm suggesting that they might well be interdimensional, but who knows? They could come from the inner Earth. The UFOs, certainly. I mean, Admiral Byrd, that haunts me. Because this is a highly respected gentleman who is telling people something like then science fiction. And yet he believed it. And do you know what? I believe him. I think there is quite plausible that there are inner sanctums, caverns where these things are. Certainly Antarctica. And the one thing that really annoys me about this world is there's lie after lie after lie. I called it the age of lies and deception because anything different or foreign will be hushed up, always has been. You know, someone will get their hands on it. It certainly won't be us. But the point of Antarctica being sealed off is very interesting. And they will come up with all manner of excuses. You know, but I believe there is something very odd going on there, and it's not. I hate the word conspiracy theorist. I hate it because that's to undermine. It's a clown word, or clown words used to undermine researchers. But there is something to it, absolutely, and I believe that is quite plausible. Antarctica, certainly, but we can't get there. You know, and would we want to? It's freezing cold anyway. But there is something there. Something's going on. I do trust that. I do trust my instincts there as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Ron. I've got to thank Karen Beeman for the monetary donation tonight. Thank you, Karen, as usual. And thanks for all the support that you're giving us tonight on the stream. If you want to move on, Paul, I'll disappear.
Yeah. Well, time's flown. We've got about 15 minutes left, so that's amazing that you've given us so much of your time, Ronnie. Especially you've been to work all day, so appreciated. But let's just, even if we only touch on it briefly, a subject that you probably never thought you'd get involved in as much as the cryptids, and I know that you've done a little bit with Martin Groves.
Yes, the lovely Martin Groves. Yeah, smashing gentleman, smashing.
Yes, I spoke to him yesterday, funnily enough, but great guy. So when did you kind of step into that world?
I would say, because I'm quite young to this topic. You are, bless your heart, you've been involved in it from day one. Mine is more recent. Perhaps a few years ago, 3 years ago, I developed an interest in the werewolves through yourself. And I was intrigued to find a deputy sheriff and his mate, who was also a deputy sheriff, I believe,
Yeah.
in the land between the lakes. And they had an encounter 30 odd years ago, which I believe was real. He saw it, his mate saw it, them. But what interested me about this is the fact that his commanding officer told him, who was very kind to him, he believed him, because these are respected men. Back then, respected men. He believed what he had seen, but he cautioned him to keep it quiet for the time being. And Martin certainly did that. He honored that. But I could appreciate his burning desire to get this story out, because I would.
Yeah.
But you have to understand, in the police force, he was in is in the police authority. And I can understand his commander. I can understand. You have to appreciate from their point of view. It's very difficult and very delicate, because they're maintaining metropolitan regions that have to have respected officers. And he was very respected, always has been, and his friend. So he came out with it. But what was interesting was when Martin stated that when they were turkey hunting and they set up camp miles out of nowhere, he felt like he was being followed or tailed, and he heard this clang, metallic clang. Now that to me immediately suggested something coming out of the ground. It would invoke an understanding that this is some kind of military complex that is unleashing the beast. This is what I believe he was meant to believe. Something created that, but it wasn't from the ground. This was after the manifestation of these beings. Now, when he saw them, and again, I loved his terminology of when he saw it, because of your brain does funny things. When you see something like that, the first thing he thought, it was a man in a suit.
Yeah.
So he aimed his rifle down at the feet. He couldn't be sure. And then it grinned at him. This was unholy, devilish. It was grinning at him. And then all hell broke loose. And it climbed. It couldn't have been a man in a suit, because it climbed right up the rock face. Right up. A speed he couldn't even imagine. And the poor guy was horrified. There was quite a few of them, I believe. And they just legged it. Him and his mate legged it. So this case intrigued me very much so. The fact that it also grinned at him, but it understood what a weapon was. Martin mentions this. It knew what that was. It certainly knew what that was. That was a threat to it. So it's this force. I mean, like the wolf, the family that saw the wolf at Skinwalker Ranch, that paddled down to them very, very politely, friendly. Are they made of flesh and blood, or temporary residents?
It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I don't think we're going to get any answers soon for that.
Do you know Martin's story? And I've touched on it loads of times with people in chat. I'm going to get Martin on. And yesterday, he said to me, "He's I don't know if people are aware, but he's writing another book." And he's promised me the first interview, whether we get it after the book's finished. So I look forward to that, because if you've not heard, people in chat, Martin Groves' story from the land between the lakes, you need to look for it, because it's just incredible.
Yeah,
and I do believe they saw and experienced it.
I've got the book up there. I've read it and I love it. And I've had some messages from Martin. He was very kind enough, as James Fox was, to use the material from their own documents and books and things. I've been very blessed with these very kind researchers, and most of them, nearly all of them, I have great respect for.
Before we move on to anything else, because we've got about 10 minutes, people wanting to look at your work, contact you with any information if that's what you want. Give us a bit of a breakdown of where they can get in touch with you and Philip.
Oh, well, we're on Facebook. I'm under Ronald Kinsella, and Philip Kinsella is on there as well. We have a website. You can see my artwork there at www.thekinsellatwins.com. As for the book, Illusions and the Digital Demon, it can be obtained from Amazon because mainstream publishers won't touch it, especially what I've mentioned about certain factions of certain establishments. I'm a very naughty boy. But tastefully done, though. Yeah, they're from Amazon, published by Philip Mantle's Fine Disc Press, so they're available on there. And I don't look at the reviews anymore. I think ignorance is bliss. I don't beg for them, as someone mentioned. I don't do that at all. I have no interest in reviews. I do not. If they get a pleasure from reading it, or if they don't agree with it, as certain people I know here don't agree with certain views I've just made, that's fair enough. I will respect their opinions. They must respect mine.
I did see the opinions. I were looking at them. Nothing derogatory, hence they're still in the chat.
I don't want to know.
Nothing derogatory. Else, hence they're still in the chat. That's all I will say.
Oh, I see. I thought you meant on the reviews.
No, nothing like that. So just before we leave your books, I'll give our Wolflands a plug, because why not? It's a Truth Proof live stream. We're going to revise the cover, people, not the film. But that's available on Amazon Prime. And if you want to visit our website, truthproof.uk, you can have a physical copy. Sending them out every week. Me and Les both thought there'll be no call for DVDs, but there really is. So, yeah, that can be obtained through the website, or I think we've got it on eBay as well. Les will correct me if I'm wrong. And the books, all the Truth Proof books, truthproof.uk, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that's it. The Night People are available through truthproof.uk or as digital downloads on Amazon. So that's my little plug done. Thank you.
Well, I'll just say that documentary, Wolflands, was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. And what I love is a testimony of the people listening to their encounters. That's what I love about that as well. Very haunting. A brilliant documentary. Absolutely love it. So beautifully done. The music as well by your daughter, Jessica.
Jessica, Nick, and Mick Parker.
It's amazing.
And you know, it took us a long time, but I mean, Les has never attempted out like this before, and I certainly haven't. But you know, a testament to the amount of effort Les put into it with the editing, the amount of effort we both put into it with the filming, and now we're on number 2. We don't know what title is going to come out with, but we've already got a substantial amount of footage. But let's just about, we're nearly there kind of thing with this. So I just want to touch on a few other things. You spoke about we can move away from cryptids, but this is incorporating it. The strange sound that they'd heard.
Yes.
People talk about hearing car doors slamming and strange rusting steel in places deep in a forest where you shouldn't hear heavy plant machinery or car doors slamming or boots. So what do you think that could be some kind of voice projection on behalf of these creatures? The reason I'm saying it, we've got a guy who now lives in Australia who's given us the Warncliffe Woods sighting, and we did an interview with him, and he didn't want to go show his face on camera just because his family are still close to that area. But he said that every time they saw this creature, after the incident had happened, every 15 to 20 minutes, the woodland exploded. Trees were exploding.
Yes,
branches were
I
snapping.
remember that.
And he didn't talk about the woodland being destroyed when daylight arrived. So this is some kind of voice projection, in my opinion. What are your views?
I completely agree with you. Yes, it's connected to consciousness. It's connected to consciousness, because when it was smashing the trees weren't smashed. But yet, at the same token, it's physical. Yeah, it is physical. I believe Martin could smell it as well as see it. The werewolves.
Well, you know, the smells are interesting as well. But I just want to finish on. I saw we had Ron Moorhead on a few weeks ago. I've been trying to interview for years, to be honest, and his internet was terrible. So we're going to do a pre-record. Ron's not been well. So if you're watching this, Ron, we're wishing you all the best, because he contacted me the other day, said let's get it booked. So we're going to do that. But I noticed Ron's eyes sort of light up, because he were talking about people who'd been in the forests, been in these locations, and they'd heard a clicking sound, but then they'd heard it at home. Miles and miles from the forest, this clicking sound. And I said, and I don't think he'd thought of it, and apologies if you had, I said, what if this is some kind of echolocation on behalf of whatever it is that's doing it. Like dolphins will echolocate their prey, their food. Whales will. And I saw his eyes kind of light up when I said it. And I wonder if that's what's happening. I wonder if they can use echolocation as well.
That's
Just
a very
thought.
interesting point. No, that's a marvelous idea. I hadn't thought of that myself. That's very, very smart. It's quite plausible, yeah? It's quite possible.
Yeah, so right, smells. We'll end on smells. What
Yes.
about the smells that are associated with different types of phenomena? We get the smell of sulfur, don't we? Ghostly sightings, we get the smell of tobacco. A lot of people say, "Oh, I smell pipe tobacco." What do you think?
Yes.
What's that about?
Well, it would be interesting to see, if someone had an account with a werewolf, if they've never smelt a wet dog.
They
Or
do
someone
report
who's never
smelling like something kind of rotting.
But would they smell that if they've never smelt a wet dog? Is it using some kind of
Oh, good point.
incorporating itself within our senses to promote these things? Because smells can be derived from anything. It's not just us physically smelling it. They have been known to just be conjured from the mind. You could smell something, tobacco smoke, certainly in seances when they're contacting the dead.
That's where I'm
People have
going, yeah.
been known. People have been known to actually smell tobacco, but there's no one smoking tobacco in it. Is there something generating them in them, generating this, how can I put it, promoting this smell from their brain senses because they smelt tobacco before?
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's fascinating, isn't it? And the knocks. I touched on the knocks probably a few weeks ago, and I've got to be careful not to say where I've heard this from, but a funeral director told a new member of staff that you will start to hear knocks. And it's quite common. And I'd love to throw it out there. If anybody in chat has any knowledge of this or knows people who work in these places, and let's face it, like with 100% respect for the people involved.
Yes, absolutely.
But do you, because he said they will follow you home, the knocks, he didn't mean the people, the ghosts. And sure enough, he said, we're hearing knocks on the walls in our home. We're hearing the knocks. And it's something that intrigues me. Is there something that it's like a well-kept secret within this profession? Out of respect, maybe? I don't know. But I find it fascinating that sounds are associated with poltergeist activity, associated with the hitchhiker effect. And what are your views on that?
Absolutely. I mean, the chap at Skinwalker mentioned the hitchhiker effect. Well, this would be exactly the same thing. Are we dealing with something that can change into many different facets of our belief system? Ghosts, werewolves, aliens. I'm not saying they're all, but do we have a trickster, as you mentioned, a copycat, something malicious? I don't know, but it's interesting also when you mentioned about, I remember that case with the smashing of wood, but they found nothing. So is it initiating this through the mind? To believe this, and
believe they're hearing it, or is it some kind of projection from the thing itself, making sounds, just like I don't know,
Yes.
It's fascinating. Just before we end this, and I'm going to just bring Les back. Is there any questions, Les? Thumb up, just in case we can get one or two in before, because I'll.
Yeah. There's always questions.
3 minutes, and are you okay for just a few questions, Ronnie?
Of course.
I see Nathaniel Gillis has been great to see you, Nathaniel.
Okay, I'll bring this on from Fred Flintstone. UFOs have been seen to intercept and switch off nuclear missiles in their silos. Why do they do this, Ronnie?
I touched on this point. They have only done it to a number of them. If they wished to do so, they could nullify every nuclear silo on this planet. We would build more, they do the same. We build more, they do the same. They've won. They haven't. This is a trick, concern, a promotion of concern that's a phantom. I believe that myself, because if they were so concerned, they would knock out every weapon we have, the nuclear weapons. And I say that passionately. They have not done this. This is what angers me. Oh, it's a lesson, but no, we're under nuclear threat now. They could nullify every single silo. They'd know where they are. Of course, we'd build more. They would do the same again and again until we're worn out. We can't use nuclear weapons. They haven't. It is, to my mind, a trick.
Thank you.
Right, yeah.
Time for one more?
I think that's about it, Paul. I think we are nearly out of time. What I want to do is just wrap up by saying thank you to Lee Roscoe for the monetary donation tonight. And he also adds, the Kinsella brothers make the world a brighter place. And thank you, Ronnie.
That's very kind. Thank you very much. We all do. Well, a lot of us do. As I said, I have some enemies. But there again, as I said, Jesus did as well. So
we all have them. We all do.
Thank you. That's very kind. Thank you.
So I've got to thank everybody who sent the questions through tonight. Some great questions. You'll agree, Ron? And,
absolutely. Very thought-provoking as well. Yes, I didn't.
And
there's the AI one as well I liked.
There's quite a few questions I didn't read out, so I must apologise now. We just hadn't got time. If we had another 2 hours, I'm sure we'd have got through all the questions. So I've got to thank you, Paul. I've got to thank you, Ronnie, for being on tonight's stream. We'll be back on Sunday, won't we, Paul?
We will, and we probably won't be doing it Sunday, guys, but myself and Martin Abbas have been working on something that we're going to show you one of these Sundays. It could be this Sunday, but I have a feeling it'll be a couple of weeks' time. I'll just tease you with that one. But thank you. And thank you, Ronnie. Thank you, Les.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.